Welcome to Italics, television for the Italian-American experience. I'm your host, Anthony Tamburri. On this month's episode, we'll speak with Francesco Carlo, in art known as Kento, an Italian rapper and hip-hop artist and author. One of the most noted rappers in Italy, Francesco Kento Carlo, is also an activist and blogger who lives in Rome but hails from Reggio Calabria. He is the winner of the Premio Cultura Contro le Mafie and promoter of Hip Hop Smash the Wall, a project in collaboration and in solidarity with the Palestinian scene. He runs a popular blog on one of Italy's most important newspapers, Il Fatto Quotidiano, and he's on the board of directors of LIPS, Lega Italiana Poetry Slam. An author as well, he published the memoir Resistenza Rap, Music, Struggle, and Perhaps Poetry, How Hip Hop Changed My Life, with an introduction by Joseph Sciorra. Welcome to Italics, Francesco.
Welcome, my pleasure to be here.
I said you live in Rome, but you hail from Reggio Calabria, because Calabria is extremely important for you.
Yes, thank you very much for noting this. Calabria is very important in my experience, in my inspiration, and overall in my history. Yes, it's something that I carry inside me because of our history, of our culture, of our problems, but also about the fact that we want to change some of the things that are in Calabria. Mm-hmm. That is not everything as evil as it seems, and not everything is perfect. Calabria is a land of strong contrast. We have very good and beautiful things and very evil things living together and somehow coexisting. It's very fascinating also from a storyteller's point of view.
It's also the region that has perhaps more Calabresi outside of Calabria than inside Calabria. There was a great emigration from Calabria.
Yes, that is correct. I am also a Calabrese. Yeah, I am as well.
You're one of them.
Yeah. I think every and each family in Calabria has a member who went abroad, who came back, or who didn't came back. So yes, we're all around the globe. Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about the history of Italian rap.
Right. Well, hip hop in Italy has a history. It has more than 30 years of history. The first examples came from people who were here in New York or visited the United States and then came back and brought magazines and VHS and mostly their own experience. So yes, it was the 80s. But hip-hop became mainstream very, very late. Actually, in the 90s, we had a couple of mainstream acts, but just a couple of them. Mm-hmm. Hip-hop as a movement became mainstream maybe 10, 12 years ago. So from this point of view, it's a recent thing. But as an underground movement, we have more than 30 years of history. So it's not a new thing. We had pioneers. We have people who are hip-hoppers. Now they are almost 60 years old. So yes, we're not so young.
When you began, what were some of the challenges you found in getting your career off the ground?
Well, of course, being from Calabria, Calabria is a periferia d'Italia.
It's on the periphery of Italy.
Yes, so it was difficult in the 90s when I was very young and I started rapping. It was difficult to get in touch with the scene on a national perspective. So we had to do hundreds of miles to get to the events. When we had a magazine, everybody was copying it and reading and reading again. So it was the golden age was somehow, yes, a pioneer era in Italian hip hop. Of course, when the internet came on and when I moved to Rome, everything started to be easier. Even in this moment, it's very difficult for a rapper to be a professional rapper if he doesn't live in Rome or in Milan. Italy still has this kind of problem.
Why is that? Is it because there are better venues in Rome and Milan? Is it because you have greater exposure to some of the distributors, some of the managers?
All of that.
All of it.
All of that. The labels, the venues. I know that this can seem strange in the US, but it's also a transportation problem. Yeah. Reggio Calabria, unfortunately, is far from everywhere. If I have to go to Palermo or to Bari, it's way easier to go there from Rome rather than from Reggio. So it's also an infrastructure problem. On the other side, we Calabrese and Meridionali artists feel the urge to do something to develop the scene also in our home places. And so every time I can, I try to be supportive of the Calabrese scene, to help younger guys and to be a part of, to embrace my culture, my cultural legacy also from this point of view, trying to bring it on.
So what I'm hearing is that the old phenomenon of the Southern question is still very much alive. That is, because you said, we Calabresi and Meridionali, we Calabresi and Southerners. And it's true that the railroad system, for example, is not as advanced in the South as it is, especially when you get below Naples, as it is in the North.
Yes, that is absolutely true. The questione meridionale still exists. And of course, rappers and artists can have their point of view, can have their impact on the situation, but it's a broader thing. No, it goes beyond what arts and music can do. But I think that the first and maybe most important thing that we can do is discussing it, as we're doing in this moment, and try to report in our songs and try to inspire the minds and the future of the Southern Italy.
Because it's part of your music.
Absolutely.
Voce come bomba se la verità che abbiamo spezza il braccio teso nel saluto romano. Vanzetti Barsi, sono colpevole di odiare l'ingiustizia del sistema e le sue regole, di essere italiano, anarchico, emigrante, sindacalista, antifascista, militante. E la mia gente non si scorda più il passato, con me presenta il conto di ogni secondo sprecato, a lavorare in nero come schiavi del padrone, in file senza fine.
My music couldn't exist if it wasn't for this heritage, for this legacy that I try to bring on in my lyrics. I feel like I am my people, that I am my nonno, that I am my papa, and all of their experiences are my experience. I don't know how else to say this.
Because it is that legacy that goes from one generation to the other. And any positive results depend on what the second or the third generation does.
There is a difference, though. Each generation of my family emigrated. They went to Switzerland, they went to the United States, my father went to Tuscany. Every and each generation came back to Calabria. Maybe me and my brother, we are going to be the first generation not to come back to Calabria. And this makes me a little sad, actually.
We should say you went to Rome.
Yes.
So yours is a quote-unquote internal emigration, but your brother went
My brother is in Japan.
very far.
Very far away. Migration from Calabria is still a thing, and unemployment is still a thing. So we also, actually, Italy is still not Italy, yes.
You won the Premio Cultura Contro le Mafie. There's still that issue in Calabria as there is in the rest of, we can say southern Italy, but we can say all of Italy, really.
This is another very good point, yes. There are many city councils that have been sciolti.
Disbanded.
For the fact that Mafia had a strong influence on them. And this is happening through all of Italy, not just the south of Italy. Reggio is is notorious because the city council was the first to be dismantled for a capoluogo di provincia.
Head of the province.
Yes. So yes, of course, we have this problem not just in Reggio, but through all of Italy. I think that music and rap in particular has to have a role in this. We have to speak loud, and I love my Calabria as I love my mother. So if you are kind to my mother, if you respect my mother, you're my brother. If you disrespect my mother, if you punch my mother in the face, I will come to punch you in the face, right? So this is why talking loud against the oppression, against the ties between the power, government, and mafia is not being a hater of Calabria or southern Italy. It means loving it. It means having a straight eye on what is going on, the beautiful things, but also the very bad things. And also, yes, the point was very good that Mafia, 'Ndrangheta, and of course the ties between the different mafias are not just a Calabria or a southern thing.
The film by Francesco Munzi, Anime Nere, Black Souls, demonstrates this infiltration of, or the oppressiveness of the organized crime, and how it's, on the one hand, we can say a beautiful film, but it's a hard film. It's really hard because we see that even families can be destroyed by such a cancer that is organized crime.
Yes, that is a beautiful movie. I loved it, yes, and I thought it was horrid as well in being true. Yes, of course, 'Ndrangheta has a strong family-based organization. So this is why we have so little pentiti in 'Ndrangheta, because they hit your family, and this is one of the challenges that of course have to be faced. Yes.
Besides being an activist through your music, you decided that it was time to write a book. So you wrote a memoir in Italian, you infused it with your lyrics.
Yes.
And it was published in Italy by Round Robin Press, and Bordighera Press published it in English, and we kept Resistenza Rap as opposed to Resistance Rap. We just felt that had a nicer ring. What was that need to write the book? You were already rapping, so why did you feel the need to write the book?
I was in Palestine, and I was writing my blog every single day. And it had actually big success in Italy. I had millions of readers in that period. And then the guy who was going to become my publisher in Italy, he asked me to make a book for him, and I was like, what are you asking? I was scared that a book was just going to be like the Vestito di Arlecchino, just, you know, not with a thread, not without a line that you could follow. So I didn't answer to the guy for like 2 weeks, and then I was like, okay, let's do this let's do this book. And what was the thread at the very end? The title that you mentioned, the Resistenza Rap. The fact that everywhere I went, among other things and among other stupid stuff, rap was an instrument of resistance. It was in Palestine, it was in Italy, it is of course also here in the United States. So that was the story that I was trying to tell. This made me more comfortable in taking a stance, in writing controversial lyrics.
Che una guerra e che uno scontro quotidiano. Per chi resisterà con ogni mezzo necessario. Per chi resta fuori dalla moda e dallo stadio. La musica è l'ultima trincea di Stalingrado. Per chi sa che una guerra e che uno scontro quotidiano. Per chi resisterà con ogni mezzo necessario. Per chi resta fuori dalla moda e dallo stadio. La musica è l'ultima trincea di Stalingrado.
It made me feel better about the effectiveness of what words and lyrics could do. So here we are, Resistenza Rap. Actually, I love the fact that in Italian and in English it has a different meaning if you invert the word.
Yeah.
Resistenza Rap in Italiano is like rap resistance in English. But you kept Resistenza Rap, so you give a third dimension to it that I loved.
Good.
And we kept the
Resistenza
Italian
Rap.
lyrics as
and
well.
we kept the Italian lyrics as well. They were translated within your text, and then they're an appendix in the end. What has been the reaction to the book?
The reaction was incredible, was above all my expectations. I did, I think, maybe 50 or 60 presentations in Italy, which is a huge
Which is
number.
a lot. No, yeah, it's a large number. Yeah.
In Italy. Actually, every time that I have a gig, every time that I have a concert, is likely that a presentation of the book happens as well. I had huge feedback from both younger and older generation. There was this very young boy from Reggio who told me that my book was the first one he finished. It's incredible.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Yeah.
Of course, not everyone did agree with what I said because I took a strong stance. But that was what I was looking for, actually. Also because of the actual political situation in Italy, which brings the discussion to very different topics, very heartfelt topics. And I think that my book gave a small contribution to that.
What about from some of the Calabresi who have read your book? You see the issue, the challenges being with the Calabresi people themselves, right? By sometimes allowing things to happen. And so I just wonder, you know, what kind of reactions you may have gotten, like, oh, it's not, people saying, oh, it's not our fault, it's not our fault, you know, we're victims, whatever.
But Anthony,
Yeah.
if we don't help ourselves, who will?
Right.
So actually, I had the most beautiful reactions from Calabresi. The book went to Australia already, and I had a beautiful reaction from the Calabrese community there as well. But I think that from every and each page of my books, you can see that I love Calabria. I don't want to cry over ourselves.
Right, exactly.
It's always about taking a stance. It's always about being proud of our history and about fighting who wants to destroy our country, our land.
Yeah. Yours is the first generation, or you're part of a generation that so far has not gone back. So your parents have gone back to Calabria.
Yes.
So you go back and visit occasionally, I assume.
Yeah, actually, I go very often.
And what's it like to go back?
It's actually nice and funny because I'm kind of a local celebrity. So yeah, it's being a son again. I get to my nonno, my miei zii, all of my family. It's our seeds, our flavors. It's getting back to when I was a child.
You're from Reggio Calabria, which is a wonderful city at the lowest point of the peninsula.
Yes, it's the very tip
It's
of
the
the
very
boot.
tip of the boot. And it's a wonderful city. It's beautiful. It's a cultural city. And yet it's got some problems too, doesn't it?
Reggio is one of the most difficult areas of Italy. From a viewer's perspective, maybe the very center of Reggio is beautiful. But we have also lots of unfinished areas, lots of unfinished buildings. Of course, we have poor areas in the city. But the whole area, the whole province of Reggio is beautiful. It's a land that tourists don't see often, but they should, because Reggio is the epitome of what southern Italy is, in my opinion. The beautiful things and the very bad things. Most of the times, when my friends from abroad come to Reggio, yes, they have this epiphany. They seem to finally understand what southern Italy is, in good and in bad.
This is not your first trip to the United
No, my
States.
third one.
Your third one. But it's your first time you went to Ellis Island.
Oh my God, what an experience.
Yeah.
It was stronger than I expected. It was actually, the exposition is very it's beautiful. I thought it to be very accurate and very respectful at the same time. It was a strong experience. When I came back from Ellis Island, I didn't want to do anything else in the day. I just sat and wrote and sent stuff to my father in Italy, and I had to let it sink. Actually, I'm going to tell on record something that I said before. You should take the commitment whenever a politician or an authority from Italy comes to New York. You should bring them to Ellis Island first thing, because I think it gives a very true and respectful, but also painful description of what we are, of what we have been, of some things that could happen. I don't want to get political, because it's above than that.
We wonder, why is it that Italy doesn't study its emigration history? There is that unique aspect that even though in a 100-year period, 30 million people left Italy, that history is not part of your education. In the school system, you never studied the history of Italians leaving Italy. Yeah.
That's frightening.
Yeah.
Yes. Also because, being
so,
Calabrese, from the very south, I had to learn that history from my grandpa, from my father, and from personal researches.
I agree with you 100%. Everybody from Italy, whether they are diplomatic or not part of the diplomatic corps, should go to Ellis Island.
How can we make this happen?
We have to do. We just have to insist on it. And I'm expecting that you're going to maybe write a song or two about Ellis Island.
Yes, I'm expecting that as well.
Can we
actually,
expect something from?
yes, there is something happening
There's
in my ear.
something in
Yeah, absolutely.
There's that wonderful saying at Ellis Island, wonderful, poignant, saying, they told me the streets were paved with gold. And when I got here, I found out not only weren't they paved with gold, they weren't paved at all, and I had to pave them. It's that whole idea of end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century. Italians, half of the workforce that built this city.
Well, but now maybe it's time for us to pave this other route, right?
Yes, exactly. I want to thank you for taking time out and being with us.
Grazie.
We're driving around the 106 Ionica, the notorious death road. In some towns of the Lockride region, it's so narrow it becomes an alternating one-way alley. On August days like this, the light here is white hot, and the air conditioning in the minivan is on full blast. On one side, the name of the band, Calafro, is written in capital letters, smaller letters, though still very visible. It says, vehicle confiscated from the Mafia. Scrivo per Reggio per chi vive alla giornata, scrivo un'altra avvelenata sopra i muri della strada. Scrivo una nota, una parola, io ci credo ancora, scrivo Cuba Libre, non intendo rum e cola. E l'ho già detto che di fatto siamo in tanti, questa è musica, rivoluzione dentro i vostri impianti.
Qui niente che cambi col tempo, distanti, capendoci meno e parlando di più. E sono sincero, mi sembra che il cielo stasera abbia il tono sbagliato di blu. Vorrei bruciare le foto ricordo, il diario di bordo, la vela e il timone, decostruire quell'ansia sottile che nelle mie rime rivela il tuo nome. Se mi togliessi le gioie più intense, le nubbidenze di assenze che accuso, ciò che mi manca e ciò che mi stanca, resterebbe un residuo confuso.
Has there been this resistance in Italy to the idea that rap isn't Italian music, that Italy's music is, given its melodic nature, that the more percussive sounds of rap and African-American based music is really not suited to, let's say, the Italian character or Italian culture?
Yes, it has happened and maybe it is still happening today. But it has happened in the same way it happened before to rock music, to punk music, new wave music, and so on. I don't think this is going to be much of a problem for the younger generations because they are hip-hop natives. Overall, we are facing the fact that hip-hop is 2000s rock and roll for its power to engage people, to bring on the message, to make people dance, to make people think, to make people spend their money. This is what makes hip-hop important and unavoidable. Now when I say I'm an Italian rapper, nobody blinks an eye, luckily. 2 times I have been in festivals and venues where people were killed. 2 times. Once in Rome, once in Milan. Hip-hop and violence, yes, there is a relationship. The one thing that we cannot afford ourselves to do is not to think about it, not to mention, not to take even a little bit of responsibility. We describe reality, so we have to tell the truth. And we inspire people, so we have to actually inspire them.
Could you talk a little bit about that the larger issues of migration and hip-hop?
Hip-hop is in Italy is being taken by storm by these second generations and migrants, and these guys are naturals. They are hip-hop natives. They can gather somehow around rap as a common field. It is one of the places where really there are no borders, there are no barriers, there are no limits. If you are good at rhyming, you can get your place in the spot. And yes, from this point of view, I hope that hip-hop will influence the whole of Italian society. I think that now the culture is deeply rooted enough that we cannot lose track of our identity, of who we are. And listen, I don't even think that everybody should write Resistenza Rap or should be like me or have to have my lyrics or have my commitment. But I think that there are a few things that we all should agree on. One of these things is that hip-hop was invented by black and Hispanic people here in New York. So hip-hop cannot be racist. Now that rappers are public figures, we have the chance, but also the responsibility to take a stance for what we believe in.
Oggi statue capitale sono in sostanza sinonimi. Non ci possono cambiare o fare che l'ansia ci domini. Io bestemmio il dio denaro, lo schifo non mi contamina. Suono rivoluzionario, sopra ogni rigo c'è l'anima.
Thanks for watching this episode of Italics. I'm Anthony Tamburri. Arrivederci alla prossima puntata.